It was another birthday of Grandma Galia, that same annual show where the protagonist was not the honoree, but his spoiled grandson, Timur. This time, however, something in the invitation by telephone has already left me on alert. "Svetochka, please come, Timur is asking for you," my mother said with that morose tone that only used when she wanted something. Anyone with a minimum of common sense would be suspicious. After all, Timur just remembered me when I needed something. Last time, it was a gamer chair request accompanied by false compliments to my cuisine. 2 weeks later, he told friends of the building that I had tried to be a mother, but had failed miserably. His words. "I learned from a distant cousin." Even so, I went. Against all the instinct, against logic, I was. Because, despite everything, it still appeared. The party was a chaos in my brother's 3-bedroom room. Balloons, 2 processed cakes with cream flowers, scattered gifts. Timur, the center of attention, boasted for a girl that Grandma had promised a car at 16. My mother laughed like the funniest joke in the world. My arrival went unnoticed. I had to cough loudly and wave so that, reluctantly, I was indicated an empty chair. My gift, an amber necklace I chose carefully, was forgotten in the box, ignored. Meanwhile, my mother detailed everyone how Timur's teacher insisted on putting him in a class for gifted. No one asked about my store, about the charity fair I organized weeks earlier. I was just an empty space, a convenient target for reaffirming their own superiority. They sat between 2 strangers. One held 2 cans of beer, the other took my fork without asking. I didn't complain. For years I swallowed everything silent. Until Timur got up, went to me with a glass full of soda and, looking into my eyes, threw all the content on my lap. "Grandma said you have no place here," he announced, while the entire table exploded in laughs. My mother commented to her friend, "Timur only talks about what she thinks." My brother even clapped. I cleaned the skirt with napkins, smiled as if nothing had happened. But for the first time, it was no shame I felt. It was a cold clarity. They never wanted me around. Never. And at that moment, finally, there was no longer how to pretend things were different. I waited 5 minutes, said goodbye with education and left. At home, I opened the notebook. For more than a year, my brother had convinced me to be a borrowing for his expanding business. At the time, I was still numb by the loss of my daughter, signing papers without reading, just to leave me alone with my pain. But that night changed everything. I revolved the bail. I blocked the credit line. In the morning, my brother's car, bought 3 months ago with my endorsement, was screened. At 8 at point, he appeared on my door, with that same panic look disguised as concern that I knew so well. This time, however, there was not our mother to save him with a check, nor do I be willing to pretend that everything would be resolved. "You have to fix it now," he demanded, without a good day, without a word about what happened the night before. As if I were the villain of history, not the victim of years of humiliation. When I closed the door in his face, the phone calls started. First he, then my sister-in-law, then my mother. Each with their strategy, guilt, misunderstanding, threats. Timur, of course, did not bother to call. It only sent a video of an influencer crying, without any message. As if that explained something. At dusk, another surprise, I was late at work and found my car vandalized. Risk switches to metal, torn side mirror, shattered rear glass. I didn't need to look much. The security cameras showed Timur and a friend, hoods pulled, laughing. How much of them filmed and the other wrote something in my car with red spray. I didn't care about anyone. I didn't shouted, I didn't cry, I didn't make a scene. I just observed the destruction in silence, knowing that for the first time in a long time I had made the right choice. They had crossed the line. And I had finally decided not to allow it anymore. The pathetic scene of a bad rap clip, Timur posing with a bandit air, his friend throwing a flower vessel on the market stairs, didn't even blink me. I took the phone and called Uncle Roma, the only rational being in our nest of family vipers. He arrived in less than half an hour, watched the images in silence. When he finished, he leaned on his chair, died to the police and passed the phone to me. No discussions. It was not me who called, he stayed until the end of the statement. The policeman was polite but meticulous. It was not the first complaint against Timur Mikhailov. At school they had already registered incidents, vandalism, invasion of private property. Until then, everything went unpunished. But with those images, there would be no escape. In the morning Mikhail appeared again. This time, he called me as I walked from side to side on the sidewalk in front of my house, as if I expected me to go downhill, begging forgiveness. When she realized she wouldn't get what she wanted, she started screaming. I didn't understand everything, but some words cut the air. Betraying, heartless, will still regret. Then it was my mother's turn. A voice message, dries like ice. I don't know what it gave you, Svetlana. For money, do this scandal? For a child's play, do you want to destroy the family? They still didn't understand. None of them. It was not Kolya, neither broken glass, nor debt. It was over years being treated as the poor relative, tolerate for pity, the one who does not love, but is used. It was about slow and calculated erosion, their conviction that if I didn't explode, it was because I didn't notice. They thought I would bend. Instead, for the first time, I saw your perfect world crack, and that was just the beginning. The formal accusation arrived days later, damage to the equity, Article 167 of the Russian Penal Code. The damage exceeded the limit for crime. More, vandalism and abuse of power. Since Timur was no 16 years, the case was referred to the Inspection of Youth Matters. Mikhail and Olga were summoned to the police station. With the images, there was no denying. The satisfied faces, the spray can in hand, the staging to the camera. I didn't feel triumph, nor did I consider myself victorious. I just opened the store as usual, scanned the plaster of the stairs and returned to work. But the phone did not stop. Clientes told me that Mikhail was spreading to the acquaintances I had forged everything, mounted the recordings. One of my suppliers was visited by my mother, who warned about my nervous problems since the tragedy. I didn't react. Instead, I sat down and began to map every thread that turned on us all the ties that, by stupidity, I had tied to my own neck. The credit line was already frozen. Then came the Olga kiosk sublease contract in the European Mall. I was also a guarantor. Then the acquiring for her store at Wild Berries. And Kaisha register, contracts with Tinkoff, Agnip. All hanging in my name. My mistake. Too generous, too confident. Now, I resumed the control. Until the end of the week, I broke all the financial bonds, I cancelled the accurate contracts, I revolved power of attorney, sent to the IRS an order to remove my data from all documents linked to her MEI. They could not receive a single payment without the checks for which they were not prepared. Methodical. Cold. Effective. The Olga store at Wild Berries has been blocked in 2 days. Mikhail's sublocation contract was annulled. At the door, they stated notifications. To the. He called all day, left voice messages, sometimes pleading, sometimes threatening. In the end, I almost cried. My mother also called. The tone had changed. You are destroying the family. Your father would not have wanted that. Funny. Dad was the only one who saw me as a person, not as a plan B. And then a revelation. They thought it was all theirs. They acted as if I was lucky to be close. But the truth was different. Everything was sustained by me. My work, my signature, my reputation, my risk. They never valued, because recognizing this would be to admit my strength. And the idea that I held on my hands what they could not control it crazy. They lost control. I arrived late at home. The store showcase, once again shattered. They didn't even bother to hide. On the floor, a stone with a ticket trapped by an elastic. You'll sigh alone for the rest of your life. I was not afraid, no anger. I grabbed the stone, held the note to the deposit wall and called Uncle Rome again. The next morning he arrived with a lawyer, this time, for real. Criminal action. Civil process. Moral damage, lost profits. Everything the law allowed. I didn't argue, I didn't hesitate. These were no longer birthdays, nor Kolya, nor Windowns. It was about tracing a thick, definitive line. They were no longer family. They were just people with the same surname. Marked the date of Timur's hearing for youth inspection. But the civil process was not just against him now. It included damage to the store, the car, the systematic threats. Uncle Rome ordered the lawyer not to let any details escape. We had the recordings, the ticket, witnesses, and a relentless professional. I thought they would retreat, that they would panic behind the scenes. Illusion. 2 days later, a voice message of an unknown number. I almost deleted, thinking it was spam, but something made me hear. A young, shaky voice. My name is Anna. I worked at your brother's kiosk, the one who closed. At first, I didn't understand what was going on, but when I learned of the process, I remembered one thing. She had listened, weeks ago, Mikhail and Olga planning how to declare me crazy. At the time, I didn't know who they spoke. Now, I understood. He added, the second showcase, he himself broke. I called back on time. Anna answered, the voice still shaking. I got tired of silent. She had messenger conversation prints, Mikhail asking to buy paint, demanding reports. I passed the contacts of the lawyer. She sent everything. That same night, another woman contacted. Helped Olga with the online store. It becomes counterfeit invoices in my name, as if I were a partner. They used my identity to close contracts, get deadlines, even return goods as if they were defective. He sent everything to Uncle Rome before dawn. The case is no longer a simple vandalism to become a serious criminal accusation, fraud, falsification, illegal use of personal data. The lawyer updated the petition within hours. They were not prepared. I waited for them to panic, to apologize, to shut up. As if it were going to happen. Late at night, I heard a noise below. I checked the intercom camera on my cell phone. Mikhail, Olga, and my mother were standing in front of the store, real estate, just looking at the showcase, as if they expected something. Then Mikhail took the phone and started a live on VK. I watched in real time. He called me a parasite. He said I speculated with the death of my daughter, who lived by whining about my tragedy to extort money. As if I had lost Kolyar on purpose, as if those 6 months in the children's hospital, the nights in light beside the bed, the empty room were just a Machiavellian plan to manipulate the family. That I was trying to destroy everything. I needed psychiatric help. My mother remained behind him, arms crossed, stone face. Not a word. Not a 10. To prevent it. They didn't know I was watching them from the apartment window over the store. I didn't shouted. I didn't run down. Not before lightly touching the showcase with your fingers, as if you wanted to make sure that was real. It didn't come in. No ticket. He didn't try to justify anything. It just turned and disappeared in the Sunday afternoon crowd, dragging with it the weight of everything that was not said, of all the opportunities that let it escape, of every word that could have saved something, but never came. I didn't run after. I didn't send a message. I didn't allow that moment to become another round of a game that I had already gained without playing. Because the victory was not in the judge's sentence, nor in the increasing numbers of the bank account, not even in their absence in my life. It was there, in those 5 minutes of silence before the showcase, the mute recognition that while they still fought against past ghosts, I had already built a future without them. On Monday, the team arrived earlier than usual. They brought coffee, homemade cakes, and an energy that only exists when people know they are part of something larger than themselves. One of the girls, the same one who warned me about my mother's visit, left a discreet envelope on the table. Inside, a printed photo of the security camera, my profile mother, with my hand still backed by the glass, and the reflection of the movement within the projected store in your eyes. On the back, a handwritten phrase with a shaky letter, sometimes what we don't say screams louder. I kept the photo in the drawer, between contracts and expansion plans. Not as a trophy, not a painful memory, but as proof that even silence can be an answer. And perhaps the most honest of all. Life followed. Orders increased. The prize of the Chamber of Commerce arrived, accompanied by an article in the local newspaper that highlighted not only the growth of the business, but the story behind it, how to turn pain into opportunity. It wasn't me who suggested the title. I didn't need to. Some journalists have a keen spoof to what really matters. Sometimes at night, when I close the store and I stay alone a few minutes between the shelves, I think of those who still insist on seeing myself as the broken woman of yore. They do not understand. There is no more room for anger. There is no more energy for resentment. What's left was a sharp clarity, like the morning light after a storm. They chose to be spectra. I chose to be real. And in the end, reality always wins. I didn't even hesitate to cross the door behind her, nor did I run to get the phone with the urgency to dial his number. I just followed by wiping the glass shelves and checking the cashier of the day, because at that moment his appearance meant no more than the shadow of a passenger lost on the sidewalk at dusk. A strange thing, the truth. I don't keep hatred for this family that carries my last name. I don't miss Sunday's lunches, where each soup spoon was seasoned with trials, where I was extra in a theater of others, where my words had the weight of an empty echo. I do not long for the mother who extended her protection to anyone, the neighbor's cat, the cousin's husband's nephew, a stranger on the train, but never to the daughter who lost a son and only needed a little human warmth. Sometimes, when the store hits another sales record or when local press highlights our solidarity initiatives, I share the news with one cousin or another, those who still retain humanity. I do this without triumphalism. I only find facts, knowing that they will spread information through family channels faster than any rumor. And there, in their rented apartments or at the house of some distant relative, they will hear from my steps and understand. His curses have become blessings. Some CHA. Mariam that of petty revenge, but I prefer to see how the natural law of things, who tried to drown me, sank alone. I just learned to swim. And now, as I fell asleep in my apartment on the store, listening to silence not poisoned by fake smiles, I know one thing: the best revenge is no revenge. It is a life lived with intensity, despite all its predictions.